to the War Room. Denver, if you can toss up this horrible CNN article on screen, it's almost like the globalist hacks over there can't conceal their joy or excitement for the prospect of the Chinese Communist Party overtaking the United States on the world stage. They talk about how with the host of foreign visits that Xi Jinping has been entertaining over there, particularly from Western countries who seem to sort of be reneging on the traditional U.S.-dominated trade and economic hierarchy, obviously coupled with Xi Jinping calling for the Chinese currency to become the sort of new global reserve currency. All of this together, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, basically on every single issue, the legacy media has been wrong, whether it's the origins of COVID, misinformation, I could go on, election integrity, you name it. But I also think one of their most serious, I would say, misdiagnoses is that of the threat that the Chinese Communist Party poses. And you see it on full display in this article. And it's quite interesting watching all these intellectuals who told us that China wasn't a threat. They are so great. We should trade with them. I believe it was Joe Biden who wrote an op-ed for the New York Times in the early 2010s saying that China isn't a threat. It's a rising tide lifts all boats. They're actually our friend. They're not an enemy. But now, all of a sudden, the 11th hour, all of these people are realizing what we've been telling you here on the War Room for years, what feels like decades, is that the Chinese Communist Party is indeed a very serious and very credible threat. And you're seeing that on full display right now, the way that Keir Starmer was treated when he went over there, not just the fact that he didn't even get a private tour of the Forbidden City. That's unheard of. They also, I think, found the only people above 6 feet tall in the entirety of China and made him dress up as guards when they were doing the formal procession. So he was mogged, as the kids would say. He looked very tiny, and he was grabbed by one of the premier CCP officials and yanked over like this. And the only reason that he even was allowed to go on that trip in the first place, the operative word they're being allowed, was because they granted China rights to basically a new, much larger, I'm sure great for intelligence gathering purposes, embassy in the UK. And in exchange, he got basically nothing. And Mark Carney, of course, got, I think, what was it, about 6 or so MOUs. But I guess to get that, he had to publicly shill for the Chinese Communist Party on what seems to be a lot of global stages recently, most notably calling straight out in the open for a new world order. I believe that was at Davos. And obviously what you're seeing going on with the Central Military Commission, with Xi Jinping purging generals, further consolidating power, showing that he is as strong as ever. But I think really quite concerning the movements that we're seeing around Taiwan, not just the escalated intensity of the naval exercises that are going on there, but the types of people that are being installed at the highest levels of China's Central Military Commission. The vice chairman, that's sort of the second in command level, that's where we've seen a lot of the purges. I think it's upwards of like 80%. It's wild of his generals are gone, but they're basically filling the decks with the younger crowd, which ascribes to what is colloquially known as the wolf warrior diplomacy style, which is much more aggressive. They think Taiwan is theirs. I would just remind China that you never had any presence, authority, dominion, or sovereignty or territorial claims to Taiwan. I think the Netherlands has more than you guys do. But that a lot of these generals are so obsessed with pleasing Xi Jinping, it's this form of political correctness where they will just yes-man him essentially into invading Taiwan, and they're much more aligned with that 2027 invasion plan as opposed to 2035 or beyond. I don't harp on just because Taiwan is important. It's important because it is the front lines to that new world order if/when China were to invade, whether kinetically, hybrid, gray zone, take your pick. That would be very, very bad, not just for Taiwan, but for the world order as we know it. And we already see, you want to talk about election interference, what the Chinese Communist Party does there with the KMT, how they buy off elections, how they pay off candidates. I mean, you think it's bad here. It's wild what goes on there. And now, and yet another display of complete and utter fealty, you got the vice chairman of the KMT going overseas to China, leading a 40-person delegation, totally kissing up sycophantically to the Chinese Communist Party, completely selling out. And here's why this is so important. You want to talk about when you're seeing this new world order come and start butting heads. You can see it right now on the issue of Taiwan's defense budget. Again, understanding Taiwan as a sort of flashpoint in what is the potential kinetic part of World War III. Certainly the economic and information warfare stuff is already underway. But it's really quite concerning because it's all over the special defense budget, which the DPP, the current party in power there, is trying to push, get it up to $40 million US to make sure that Taiwan can actually deter effectively the Chinese Communist Party. But you see their opposition introducing legislation to neuter that to basically, $0. I think it's around 10 million, but I'm sure they would love it to be zero. And they want that and they love that because that's what their Chinese Communist Party overlords are telling them to do. And within the legislative yuan, which is their equivalent of, Congress or Parliament, the KMT, so the CCP proxy, has a majority or plurality, I guess, of 52 seats. The DPP's at 51, and TPP, this sort of third party, is at 8 seats. The United States has expressed to President Trump that they want Taiwan to pass this budget. They desperately need it. And meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party obviously does not want it to happen. So when you bring all this together, it's quite clear that we are seeing in real time, like even the CNN article picks up flashpoints in the global struggle for sovereignty between the United States of America and the Chinese Communist Party. And the Chinese Communist Party is rolling extremely hard. And it's very concerning. And, we'll get into it at some point down the road. But this special defense budget really, I think, is becoming a test, sort of first round or first instance where you're seeing, the Chinese Communist Party sort of running roughshod over the United States and getting what they want through various means of political hybrid and, in some cases, kinetic warfare.